Hello, it's a real pleasure to welcome you to this webinar with the long title, which focuses on the hows and whys of using deviation data for process improvement. We have today attendees from 21 different states as well as from Canada. Welcome. Let me introduce ourselves. My name is George Baer, and that's my picture taken in the bright sun outside Old Memorial Hospital in Newport Beach in Southern California, where OTIS was born and tested 8 years ago. The OTIS logo at the bottom of the screen is the acronym for Occurrence Tracking Information System, which is a software solution for easy and paperless deviation tracking and trending, and more on that later. We are so pleased to have Lieta Maffei as our presenter today. As you can see, she has the better picture, and behind the picture she has a wealth of hands-on quality assurance experience in all blood banking functions from which she will be sharing today. Our presentation plan today is straightforward. First, I will soon stop talking and Lieta will begin the presentation. Following Lieta's presentation, I will present a very short demonstration of the OTIS software in action. We will save the last 10 minutes to answer your questions. I'll now turn over the microphone to Lieta. Welcome, Lieta.
Thank you, George. First of all, I would like to thank Deviation for inviting me to do this presentation. I'm really delighted to be here today talking about one of my favorite subjects, which is electronic deviation reporting and the efficiencies that can be gained and the impact on process improvement. So it's really great to be here. And so without any other talking, I'll move right on to our objectives for the day. What I would like to do is show how timely data, which is derived from electronic problem management or deviation tracking systems, can drive quality improvement initiatives. And you'll see me use the term problem management throughout this because that's generally what I call deviation management or incident reporting or whatever. So you'll hear me say problem management from time to time. The second objective is to demonstrate how this data can increase productivity and explain how these systems, these electronic deviation or management systems, can positively impact your next inspection, and also to explain how this data can streamline processes and improve efficiencies in your problem management systems. So basically I like to talk about the first thing actually I noticed was the decrease in the throughput time that led to efficiency within my own organization when I first instituted a system. One of the things that you see immediately is the process has been streamlined by moving to the electronic system, that you can monitor the process better, that the ability to scan a donation information number, and as you all know, anytime you can scan something, it is much more accurate usually than what people do with transposing numbers. And anytime a user logs on, they can see what is outstanding for them. And then basically the quality incident report SOP outlines the process, is outlined as it follows, basically the process follows the quality incident report SOP because we don't have people making errors. It's just very automated in that it moves things from place to place. Okay, now the next area that I wanted to talk is more about increasing QIR efficiency. And as I said before, it simplifies the process and it ensures FDA reportable events are brought to the user's attention. And basically, depending on the number of QIRs generated, which is a quality incident report, an FDA reportable event can sometimes fall off the radar. And I think that goes to, it's like the items or reports get misplaced in a manual system. Sometimes they get lost. And so with an electronic system, they don't get misplaced, they don't get lost, they get where they're going much quicker and in a timely manner. And then because also there's, like I said, no moving the QIR from department to department or person to person. So that's more of their efficiencies. And then I believe this is the last slide on efficiencies, but we talked about the quality management system or quality problem management system, SOPs, typically contain information to sort of control the process in a time frame. The minimum numbers of days allowed from discovery of the problem to the initiation of a QIR, and that's usually a couple of days. Or the number of days the QIR can stay in each step. For instance, the investigation and corrective action step must be forwarded to the next step within 20 days, excuse me. And the purpose of the timeline is to try to get that report to the quality assurance or the supervisor, whoever it is that provides the final review and approval for the QIR, so that they can do that, and they have 15 days in case it was an FDA reportable, that nobody realized it was a reportable. It still has that one last check. So that's another way that electronic quality incident reports increases efficiency. Yep, I was wrong. There's one more. Regulatory and accreditation compliance. And it really assists on on-time FDA report events, because once it is marked as an FDA report, it constantly nudges you to remember that you have this report outstanding. Then the QIRs get completed faster, like I was saying, and then that leads to timely data and better tracking and trending. And of course, tracking and trending leads to process improvement. Okay. Well, here we're talking about the ABB Standards, the FDA Quality Assurance Documents, Joint Commission, PAC requirements, state regulators. Basically, I'm not going to go into the specifics of the various regulations by each group. I know that Randy German has gone over these in a previous webinar that he did for OTIS, as well as in an article that was published in the March 2015 issue of Advance. But obviously, we have to follow all these regulations for quality management. So we've got all of these regulators and more, that I know I've missed some, and they all want us to identify problems. They want us to report problems. They want to investigate problems. They want us to conduct root cause analysis as appropriate. They want us to take corrective action, report customer complaints, implement plans to reduce risk, and conduct effectiveness tests. That kind of ties it all up. I do want to remind everybody, as you know, there's corrective action and immediate correction action, and then a greater corrective action, such in CAPA, where you have corrective action and preventive action in the more serious or trend items. But mostly we need to remember to right away make whatever action is necessary to correct it. Recall the unit from a blood or a blood center from a hospital. Get the blood back from the floor because the wrong one was released. Things like that. Some of the things that regulators really like is, of course, the on-time FDA biological product deviation reports, which is not unreasonable at 45 days. But the system will remind the user that FDA reportable events require action. The facility's on-time FDA Reportable Events will probably get better if they have any problem. I know not everybody has problems with this. Provide rapid response to an inspector's request for QIR reports during an investigation. When they're doing their audit, it's nice to be able to just quickly go to the computer and get whatever they want or show them reports you've already run. It's really easy to create and show tracking and trending to an inspector this way, and then you have timely, reliable data that shows that you're doing continuous process improvements. So those are the kinds of things that inspectors and auditors really like. Okay, we need to talk a little bit about data, the power of, and it needs to be good data. Data can be powerful, but the information must be timely, well organized, and useful to those reviewing and utilizing the data. So when we look at this, we look at the blood center and the transfusion services and what it is they require. They need reports that are easy to run, like a couple of clicks, and you can show a report, say, for a certain time period, a couple of days, see what's going on. You can do reports basically that run themselves, reports that are easy to understand. And I mean immediately understand. You don't want to have to process the information too much. It should be clear what it is. And the reports can be used for trending. And, of course, they can be used for process and performance improving, because once you have the data and it's good data and it's useful, then you can actually do something with it. The other thing in terms of increasing productivity is blood banks and transfusion services require an increase in productivity. A good electronic problem management helps with this. It makes the process more efficient, as we talked about. It reduces the number of incomplete quality reports. And here I want to just tell a little story. Basically, the incomplete reports take much, much longer to get completed because they have to be sent back in a manual way back to the person. And if it's like a big blood center, it usually goes back via, the mail envelope and all of that. But so in the electronic system, you just send it back to them and it shows up as something that they need to do because they haven't finished that. The other thing we require is elimination of the risk of misplaced and lost reports. And I can't say how important that is. It increases transparency and accountability. People can see what's going on, and also their manager can hold them accountable because they're waiting for this to get done. And it shows up every time you go in to look at the reports. It makes it easy to assign follow-up and makes incomplete assignments more apparent. So that ties into the transparency and accountability. It decreases time from initiation to completion, like the turnaround time, like with an instrument. Think of it that way. And it makes recognizing trends easier and quicker. One of the things I wanted to talk about is the decreasing number of QIRs. A good electronic problem management system will literally decrease the number of QIRs. Now, you may think I'm a little crazy when I make a statement like that, and you're saying, what is she talking about? Let me give you an example. When in my past life, as a director of quality assurance, I saw a situation where there's a manual system and a problem continued to occur because the QIRs weren't being processed in a timely manner and getting to the quality assurance department. And finally, someone in our department, I don't know if it was me or someone else, a couple of us actually, I think, realized that there seemed to be some kind of trend. But given the manual method, it took quite some time for us to show the trend and pull all the data while the persons doing it were, continuing to make the error. So that's really important. So, and I know in smaller facilities it's not quite as difficult as I think in some of the larger facilities. But the other thing it does is it increases resources. And by that I mean mostly people resources. Because if people aren't sitting working on quality incident reports, they have time to do other things. And other things that are really important to patients are getting done, will get done faster. And it decreases the cost. And like any industry or workplace, it costs money when problems occur. These costs include rework, in other words, trying to fix the problem so that you can actually use, say, the blood product, the time lost trying to fix the problem, the time lost to report the problem and investigate it and root cause. And then there's the cost of other more productive work not getting done. So anyway, so that's, kind of decreasing number of QIRs will certainly lead us down the right path here. The benefits, as I see them, of electronic processes, basically, as I mentioned earlier, the SOP requires all quality incident reports to close within 45 days. And in a paper system, and this is real, I won't tell you where from, but this is real, 25% of the reports actually took, 25% actually took longer than 45 days. That's really bad. Another 25% barely met the 45-day time frame. And then of the remaining 50% of those manual reports, most of them closed in 25 to the 30-day range. And sometimes, and this was really important, an FDA reportable was late. And then that would appear on a 483 when the FDA came in. When they switched to an electronic system, with rare exceptions, reports were closed within 45 days. More than 75% closed in less than 30 days, and late FDA reports dropped to 0. It was pretty dramatic, so I thought I would share that with you. And let you know also that I really do, I really am excited about the electronic quality incident reporting because of things like this. As we go on, we'll continue to talk a little bit about them being more efficient and a little bit about closing the loop. But basically, paper needs to be moved around manually from person to person, department to department. And like I said, paper is misplaced, lost, incomplete. And even in the case of incomplete, when you know where the report is, it moves much quickly, as I mentioned earlier. The electronic movement between people and departments, seconds. Once somebody finishes something, it goes along and moves to the next person. And you don't have misplaced or lose the electronic documents. No way. One of the major, and I think everybody has backup systems, so I know, we're dealing with electronics, so we got to keep that in mind, but we all have backups. So, but one of the major upsides to using an electronic process is they close the loop in a timely way. And when I talk about closing the loop, I mean, we're talking about that's like the completion of the report. And so that's it on that. And then I wanted to get into a little bit and just go over some sort of definitions, if you will, because I think people use process performance all together. I think it doesn't hurt any of us to relook at what it is we're doing and sort of define it. Basically, it's a systematic approach to optimize a process to achieve efficient results. It is an action or actions to identify, analyze, and improve an existing process to meet new goals and objectives, such as reducing incidents and cost. And for performance improvement, it can be used for individuals and for organizations. And what I did here is I took an example of a definition for organizations. Basically, it's a way of measuring the output of a process, then modifying it to increase output, efficiency, or increase the effectiveness of a process. The idea is we're trying to be more efficient. We're trying to identify problems and fix them. And again, we come to this, another slide. Basically, our external drivers, if you will, are the various regulatory agencies that we fall under. And I just thought I would mention that ABB Technical Manual does discuss very briefly process improvement, but it might be helpful to you. And so, just look there. And then I would add that internal and external audits are a great place to find places to improve. But in all of the possibilities we mentioned, we're identifying problems, investigating, and finding the causes. Part of the CAPA process is to fix the problem, basically fix it and prevent it. So, and then I think, again, I'm not going to go over these, and there's more organizations than are on this slide. Thus far, I think we can agree that electronic systems offer, that we've discussed, that electronic systems offer significant advantages over paper. Again, it's faster, it's more efficient, start time to end time or turnaround time is quicker. If you're generating reliable data, it's timely and easy, it can improve efficiency and productivity because you'll see those trends more quickly, you'll make any changes you need, and you'll become more productive. And we discussed improving quality and helping with compliance of our regulators and accreditation agencies. We explained the difference between process and performance improvement, and I think that that's important that we keep that in mind. Next, I wanted to talk a little bit about the trend, and I love the first one because it's just such a simple definition, the general drift or tendency in a set of data. A little more longer, but not much. It's basically a trend is an increase in the number, percent, or severity of events that have characteristics in common. But determining the trend or analyzing the trends are really important, and it's basically a practice of collecting the information and attempting to spot a pattern or a trend in the information. And when we talk about QIRS in the transfusion service and the blood donor center, we're talking about using trend analysis or deviation trending to understand things like how many document errors have occurred and what kinds, or how many times the donor questionnaire was incomplete, or the question was not marked and nobody noticed it, or how many unusable specimens could be tracked in a transfusion service to a single employee. So, there we are. So that's my little kind of overview on what we're going to talk about on trends. Basically, we want to monitor regularly for new trends that may involve comparing the number, percent, or severity of specific types of events over at least 2 measurable periods or of time, or comparing the number percent or severity of a specific type of event. Now, obviously, those severe items need to be fixed right away. The ones that aren't so severe also need to be fixed, but you have a little more time on them. Preventive action is taken to address the root cause of a problem, and you put together a plan for that, and the idea is that you prevent further occurrences in systems with similar processes and potentially with similar process problems. So, I mean, just, think out of the box. Don't just look at the one. Think of something else that's very similar, and it could be, essentially the same problem and essentially the same fix. And reoccurring occurrences and trends should be considered for additional analysis. And that's basically what we do. We look for, we do our analysis, and we look to find trends. And, let's go back to the reports, and this all kind of comes together. A report can easily verify or detect trends for you. Operational units require the ability to track and trend across systems. And it allows us to better prioritize resources, outline risks, ensure regulatory accreditation compliance, and leads to process improvement. And when I say verify trends, actually I already told you this story. No, I didn't. I'll just tell you this story. Basically, one time when I was at San Diego Blood Bank and we were on a manual system, we started seeing more and more problems with the donor history questionnaire, and we just couldn't figure it out. And then it was like, well, of course, we're going to have some increase in we just changed donor history cards to the Universal Donor History Questionnaire. So people are going to have a little problem with it. Well, but it got to the point where it was clear it wasn't just the new card. And so anyway, we started looking at the data more carefully and trying to identify which questions people were having a problem with. And then we went back and did some retraining, and then we saw our level go down again. I mean, they got better used to the questionnaires, and a little retraining helped them. And in particular, there's a lot of problems. There's been problems with the questions, the I am male, I am female questions, for those of you that are aware of the Universal Donor History Questionnaire versus yes and no. And, the FDA asked that that was included, asked the ABB to include that. And unfortunately, it's confusing to donors. It was meant to make sure donors are paying attention. And I think they pay attention, they're confused. And so was the staff. But anyway, but it took us a lot of time, again, to figure out what questions we had problems with, because we didn't have any kind of automated system at the time. I think, how do we identify trends? I think very often, most of us know when we're seeing the same type of problem over and over, same couple of problems over and over. Sometimes we don't expect to see a trend when we run our reports, and then we do. So, but like I said, if we suspect something, we can run a report and verify whether we have a trend or not, and we can look for trends by running reports. In terms of that, we might have preset quality metrics that we want to meet, run reports on different codes, and the system, and I'm sure George will say this, you can use 2 sets of codes if you want in the system, in the OTIS system. You look at a longer time frame. Sometimes you can see things over if it's a longer period of time, or sometimes 2 different time frames. Like, what was this like a year ago, and what is it like today? And next, I'm going to show you a couple of reports straight out of the OTIS system. And the first one is basically, if you look at the red line, the red arrow points from Deviation 1, QC 9719, that's on the left-hand side. And then if you follow the arrow, it's QC control and distribution. And I'm not sure if you can see it. Yeah, you can, a little bit. Just above that, the QC control and distribution, it says the units weren't issued in the computer. Now, if you were, the person that was responsible for this, right away you'd see that QC 9719, which is this units not issued in a computer, is 22.4%. It's relatively high, certainly quite a bit higher, at least twice, almost twice of the one right below it. So you would really, do your full CAPA investigation here, and and basically you probably have to look through some of these and see what they say. But at some point you might say, "Oh, gee, it looks, it sort of looks like there was a lot of downtime." So you might go to the IT department and find out, when they have downtime, how often they have downtime, that kind of thing. And perhaps, you can work together. Or it could be something else, but it makes it clear that there is a problem here. The next one is a pretty simple one, and if you look at this one, it's T99401. And these are some codes that were what we call, I would call a local code. And if you follow the arrow where it's 4.2%, which is not a lot, but it's a harm score. And I'm taking harm to mean that there might be harm to a patient. I'm just guessing on that. But basically, it's, a harm score. And if we look at the top, it tells us a patient with anti-Duffy A was transfused with Duffy A positive unit. So that could do harm to the patient. So that's really important. Those in and of themselves are severe. So we really need to jump on top of those and work through them. And, certainly look to see how many of those kinds of reports we've had over a period of time, because we really want to fix that problem quickly. The third is an example from basically from, say, a donor. You'd often see in a donor center, whether it be a hospital donor center or a freestanding community donor center. Basically, if you follow the top arrow, you see it's PD 1236. Well, any of us that have done FDA reports, that PD means post-donation information. And there was, we can see there's a count of 58 on those, and a lot of PDs in this section. But it was post-donation information. Specifically, the PDI was travel to Tulum, Mexico. So and that's kind of significant because post-donation information is actually an incredible amount of the reports that are done for within a blood center environment. Excuse me. It's a common blood center actually problem. Donors will, travel and forget to tell you, and the next time they come in to donate, they remember that they traveled and to a malaria or whatever. But post-donation information is the leading reason the FDA has for blood product deviations. Basically, it's responsible for 72.6% of reports, and that's blood product deviation reports on the 2014 annual summary for biologic product reports. most of the PDI reports actually come from variant CJD and malaria travel are the leading cause for these. And I know when we were at the blood center, we used to track the blood centers, track and trend these reports. Where we had a system where we'd go in and work with that data as best as we could in a manual system. But our trends were essentially the same as the FDA. I think, we need to keep in mind that operational units require the ability to track and trend across systems. And now the operational unit could be one department, or it could be of several sections in the lab, or the Department of Pathology, which includes the lab. The point is that the operational units and management need information because then they can make better decisions. Basically, this is only, the information they get from the quality incident reports is only one part of what they use to make these decisions. But it does help them, along with all the other data they look at, assist in making better decisions. And then, from there, basically, they make decisions regarding resources, capital equipment, people, reallocation of resources, things like that. So they can have some pretty significant effect on your department or where you work. The regulatory and compliance, we've talked a lot about that. It's, the quality incident reports, it's a preventive action, process improvement. And then you need to look at overall risk, the quality management system itself. Is it good? Are there any cracks in the system? What is the cost of making a process change, and what is the cost of not making the process change? And I think that that's really, really important to keep that in the back of your mind. And with that, I'm done, and I'm going to turn it back over to George now, and he's going to give a short overview of OTIS.
Thank you, Lieta. Hello again, everybody. I'm going to log into OTIS and provide you a very brief overview of its trending and paperless capabilities. When you log into OTIS, what you see in the background is the OTIS log, where each row corresponds to one of the incidents that is being tracked. And in the foreground is the NAG screen, the alert screen that says that you have an FDA reportable that has yet to be reported. You really have to go out of your way to miss a reporting deadline. I've come here to begin by showing you how we do some trending in OTIS. And we're going to trend on the deviation code. And if you look on the log, you will see that the fifth column from the right is headed DEV for deviation. And you can see the first incident in the log is a deviation code of LA8212. And that code is actually spelled out at the top of the screen. So one doesn't have to memorize what these codes mean. They are always displayed at the top. If I click on the second row, you can see the description at the top changes. Now I want to trend on these deviation codes, and I'm going to trend over this time period. In the bottom left of the screen, you can see we've got the dates from 2006 to 2015. And if you were trending over a different time period, it's simply a matter of changing those dates. And the trending is very, very straightforward. We are simply going to click on the column header of the column that we want to trend on. And when we do that, OTIS sorts this sorts the log according to the column that has been clicked. And it also color bands the code so you can see how they clump together. If you look at the top, the blue is BC4104, and there's three of them showing. Then we have a one-of-a-kind orphan, BC4202. Then we've got two-of-a-kind BC4203s, and going on down the line. So the color color banding helps you see how they clump together. And as I scroll down here, you'll see that I have a large quantity of DS2203s. And again, we don't have to memorize these codes. I just click on it. It shows up at the top of the screen. And this is a donor history question. This is the kind of thing that Lieta was talking about in her presentation. And though we're dealing with donor history questions, whether it's transfusion or processing code, it all works the same way. The trending works the same way. But we'll be dealing with the history questions here for demonstration purposes. I would also bring your attention to the column to the left. And in the column to the left, it lists the SOP that's related to this particular incident. And you can see as we scroll through that SOP 01-12-310 appears quite frequently for each and every one of these DS2203 codes. And then moving one more column to the left, we see that we have a real variety of employees involved in each one of these incidents. Just looking at these contiguous columns may very well give you the information that this particular SOP or its training needs to be reviewed and or revised. It's enough information to begin to target your efforts in focusing on what needs to be done to improve this process regarding donor history questions. And going back to Lieta's comment also, when you have some information like this, and there may be a electronic solution for this, in her case, she talked about the donor history software. Here is some ammunition that can be brought to the management to suggest or that acquisition of such kind of software may be a solution that will improve processes and results significantly. So possible ammunition for a software type solution. Lots of times there's not a software solution. It is, as Lieta was saying, is digging down and finding that root cause among these things. But this focuses your energy on where to start your investigation. As soon as we do a sort on any one of these columns in the log, down in the bottom left corner, the quick count button becomes available, which gives us the quick count report. And when I click that, you will see that the codes in our deviation column are displayed, and the number of times and the percentage each one occurs in this particular time period. So with just a few clicks and with the quick count, I can extract a lot of information to identify my trends. I'm going to close that, and I'm going to emphasize what I've just done by reminding you that we can do this on any column in the log. So I'm going to click on the SOP column, and again, as soon as it's sorted on the SOP column, I can go to the quick count in the bottom left, and I can see that this particular SOP is the most frequently occurring SOP in our log related to the incidents over this time period. So with that, I'm going to close, and I'm going to click the refresh button in the bottom center. And the refresh button is like logging in again. It just redraws the database back to go. I'm next going to go to the thing that Lieta did in her presentation, and we're going to talk about looking at the reportable incidents. And to do that, I'm going to the bottom left of the screen here. I'm going to click the filter button, and I'm going to put a Y in at the top, a Y for yes. And down in the bottom left, I'm going to say, please look at the reportable column. When I click apply, what OTIS does is display only those rows in the log where there is a Y in the reportable column. I'm going to click close. I'm going to say, yes, I know it's filtered. And now I'm only looking at the reportable incidents for the particular time frame shown here in the bottom left again. And as I scroll down here, notice that the next to last one has no reportable date, which, and you look at the left, you'll see that that's incident 1515, which is our NAG screen. So until I put in the reported date and the confirmation number I've received from the FDA, this thing is going to keep nagging me until I clear it out. Now I'm going to do something a little unexpected. I'm going to sort on the reported column. That's the third column from the right. And when I do that, I'm going to see that most of the time there's only one per day. In a couple of days I've got two of them. But by and large there's only one per day. But again, I have a quick count in the bottom left, and I'm going to click on that. And when I click on that, I get this quick count report, and I see a lot of onesies and twosies, which are not very informative. However, when I click on a date column in the upper right corner here, in the upper right corner, I have an option to collapse by year or month. So I'm going to collapse it by year. And you can see that the reportable counts have been descending across this time period. That's the kind of trend one likes to see, and that's the kind of trend one likes to report. The whole point is that with very few clicks, one can extract a lot of information. So that's all we're going to do with the trending. I'm going to click the unfilter here to get us back to go. And again, we get our NAG screen. And then I just want to close by focusing on our paperless capabilities. So I'm going to go to report 1476, incident 1476, and in the bottom right here, click the report screen. And on this report screen, you can see that we've got all the information that's been collected for this particular incident. The complete investigation is here. When it was initiated, who discovered it, the description, and notice on this description, even though this one is short, you could put an entire novel in if one wanted to put that much typing in. We've got the review, who did a follow-up, the employees involved, the related SOPs. We've got the unit numbers that are involved with this particular incident, the blood units. We've got the contributing factors. We've got the code that's been assigned. We see that it's been reported to the FDA, and we've got the FDA report number. And we've got the corrective actions we've taken. Down at the bottom, you can see in red the pieces that are missing. So what's missing here is a final review, which brings me to doing the final review. On the right side of the screen, a little above the center, we've got the button that will allow us to do the final review. So I'm going to click Final Review. And this illustrates that we do have electronic signatures, and they can be assigned to the different review points and assigned to different people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going to cancel that. But that's how this final review could be done, simply by looking at this report, just like you look at a paper report, and signing it at the bottom. I'm going to cancel that. And then off on the right, again, we have a series of documents that are associated with this particular investigation, this particular incident. And we're going to take a look at those. And I'm going to go to the bottom here, and I'm going to shrink to the whole page because we don't have to read this to see what's going on. And I'm coming up below the center on the right again. I'm going to click to the next page. This next page indicates that we have an appendix for this report, and it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's a table of contents. So I click. This is the first appendix to this report, something that's been scanned in, a physical scanner. That's nothing terribly unique, but it's there. Here is an email that has been copied and pasted in and saved as an appendix to the report. Here is an employee statement, which is an option inside OTIS. This is a place for maybe when a critical point in an SOP has been missed for employee to state why they missed it, and then talking with the supervisor indicating why they probably won't miss it the next time. So that's how these that's how the appendix works on this. So let's talk about collecting the information, the pages to go into an appendix. I'm going to go to the bottom right. I'm going to click the Edit button. This gets us inside the data collection part of OTIS for this particular incident. There's where the description gets put in. In the upper left here, you can actually create a library of descriptions. So just by clicking a button, you can put in consistent information with very little labor. But the point here is not necessarily go through all our data entry today. The point today is to look at how we can get the documents in our appendix in a paperless fashion. That's occurred in the bottom part of our screen here under the capture button, bottom center. I'm going to click the capture button. And when I do that, I get the capture screen. And in the top left of the capture screen, I've got three options. The first is the scan option, and this is just the standard scanner that's attached to the workstation. Put the piece of paper in, give it a name, and it comes in and it becomes part of your report. The third option here is the clipboard. You have copied a message from your screen to the clipboard. You can paste it in here. You've copied a short email to the clipboard. You can paste it in here. This middle one is what we call our virtual scanner. And to set the scene for that, let me describe the following scenario. For this particular incident, let's say that the employee didn't follow or misunderstood something in the SOP related to this procedure. And so as part of the investigation, you would like that page of the SOP to be part of the documentation for this particular incident. And let's say that as part of the resolution, you revise that page of the SOP. Well, that revised page could then also go in, and you'd have the before and the after, and it's the kind of thing that your AABB assessors and FDA inspectors, etc., like to see as a thorough and complete and fully documented investigation. Obviously, you could take those pieces of paper and run it through the scanner and become part of this. But if your SOPs are in PDF form or Word document form, you can just simply browse to those documents, tell it what page you want, and it comes in just as if you ran it through the physical scanner. That's why we call it a virtual scanner. Let me click the Browse button here in the upper left and go to a place that's got this one, and we're going to grab this one, and that's a Word document, and I'm going to bring it in, and I'm going to tell it that I simply want page 2. And pick Apply, and I go ahead and click Capture, and it comes in just as if I ran it through a scanner. I'm going to go ahead and save it and say OK. I'm going to close this. I'm going to go to the report for this thing, which is where we started, and notice that that particular document is now available to be included in the appendix. It's simply a matter of putting a check mark on it, saying I want it part of the appendix, and then when as I work my way through the report, there it is, page 1 of the appendix, and of course it can be put in a different position. As promised, I was going to give you, or I did give you, a very quick overview of the trending and paperless capabilities of OTIS. If you want to see more, please visit our website, www.Deviation.com, and request a Meet OTIS webinar, where we can provide a more in-depth review of what OTIS can do for you. Thank you so much for attending. Thank you so much.